For our next panel, we present a message from Sharon Chuter of Pull Up for Change, followed by a conversation with Monique Thompson, Head of Strategy, Promotions, and Multi-Device Sales, Lexi Davis, Diversity Talent Acquisition Leader, and Jesse Rhodes, Diversity Talent Acquisition Leader for North American Consumer.
Pull Up for Change is a direct action movement that was born out of our hashtag Pull Up or Shut Up. It is really a call to action to corporate America to collectively adopt a path of transparency and accountability in order to further the economic advancement of minority communities and specifically the Black community. In June 2020, over 300 companies put up for the first time, releasing their data publicly for the first time. But even beyond that, they went one step further to share clear goals and strategies for improving diversity within their organizations. Professional development opportunities like Represent the Future is extremely important to this demographic in order to better leverage networking opportunities and get the tools that they need to further advance their careers.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this conversation on Pulling Up for Change. And so today we're going to be talking about exactly that, how our leaders at Amazon are carrying forward that commitment of pulling up for change, which is not just a promise, it is actually an organization. As you may have just seen, Pull Up for Change is an organization that taps into Fortune 500 companies to ensure that they are carrying that commitment to diversity forward and driving those goals home. So I am delighted to be with two of our amazing leaders from Amazon today. I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into a conversation about what they are doing in their organizations to keep that commitment, as well as their experiences at Amazon as diversity leaders, and how Amazon is prioritizing equitable success. So Lexi, Jesse, thank you both so much for joining me. If you would both take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. Lexi Davis. I have been at Amazon for about 11 years. I currently lead a team of centralized recruiters that focus specifically on diversity and inclusion hiring.
Hello, I'm Jesse Rhodes. I've been at Amazon nearly 5 years. Coming this September, it's my anniversary. I am a diversity program leader in worldwide consumer and talent acquisition, so enabling programs to bring in top talent to the company.
Delighted to be here with you both. So thank you for sharing your stories, sharing your journeys with us. And so I'll jump right in by asking you, so 11 years, 5 years, what attracted you to Amazon?
That's a great question. I came from a competitor that when I started at that company, they were very scrappy. I enjoy scrappy things because I enjoy putting puzzles together and just, building things. And so it became very structured. And when I build things and you just have to maintain it, I'm somewhat bored. So I was told that, you should come to Amazon, it's got that feel, that unruly teenager feel, where there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. And so I was very skeptical, but I did my research and I came over and I was a member of our first military recruitment team. Which is actually diversity as well. And so sure enough, the company was a teenager at that time, and it was very scrappy, somewhat unruly. And I was really, really excited. It gave me an opportunity to do a lot of building, learned a lot of things in the company. So that's one of the reasons I came.
Sounds like great reasons. Thank you for sharing. Jesse, how about you?
Sure. So part of my day job is also heavily involved in NABA, which is National Association of Black Accountants. So I saw the commitment that Amazon had to that organization, and they actually came out to the conference, and I met the recruiting team, which we're still friends to this day, and they showed up in an authentic way about the programming, about technology, about what they're up to. I said, what, Seattle? Amazon? And so I explored. And then I had a great friend at work here too as well. And so between them being present at the conference and showing a level of commitment and actually having someone I personally knew here, really made it real for me. And when I came to Amazon since day one, I felt that love. And I'm still involved in NABA. I'm still on the executive board. And Amazon supports my engagement. And that's why I've been here to this day.
So, and I feel like you're touching on some of the thoughts that we'll talk about in this next section, because it sounds like, that scrappiness, that ability to build, and those connections are what drew you here. And so I want to talk about what has kept you here and what has gotten you here, especially when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what would you say, and Jesse, we'll start with you, what would you say has gotten you to where you are today?
And career-wise, overall, DEI, or
let's talk both.
The reason I say it that way is important because you're definitely a combination of your life experiences, right? I think back to when I was in college, right? First generation, going to school. So everything to me was new greenfield for me, right? So I joined a fraternity, I got involved in organizations, I started organizations, and that same energy is still present today. Plus years later, I won't say how many years, plus years later. And Amazon embraces that. So since I've been here, I've served in the 5 years, I moved into probably at least 4 different roles. I started originally as, I'm an accountant by trade. So I was in a finance organization. And then I had a chance to spend time within AWS, doing risk management there. And in that time, I've always been a diversity champion throughout my entire career. So back in college, as I started there, I started 2 organizations that were diversity focused. And throughout my career, I've always done some things around diversity. And so I was sharing that occurrence with my leaders here at Amazon, and they said, you should consider going over to DEI. And I kept saying, I want to do more. I want to do more. And I kept doing more, getting more non-profit boards. I was doing more activities within Amazon. And I shift my language. I want to do greater, larger scale impact. And so when I start sharing that occurrence about I want to do greater to impact more people at a larger scale, the opportunity came about. So that's why I said it depends on how far you want to go. And that's how I career shifted from finance, traditional finance guy, to diversity, equity, inclusion.
I love that. And I love what you really unpacked there about not just doing more, but doing greater. And then finding, those spaces and opportunities that were a fit for you, right?
Correct.
Like not that you just, tried to fit into something else. And I think the other thing that really struck me about what you said is that you have felt that encouragement to grow in that regard. So thank you so much for sharing that. Lexi, how about you? How did you get to where you are in DEI?
It was a long journey, but it was a great journey. So as a Black woman and an immigrant to this country, I've always been just really intrigued by the history of this country. I come from a country that it's very, very diverse. I'm talking races, cultures, and whatnot, and we're actually able to get along, right? Whatever differences there are, I've grown up watching neighbors or whatnot, or just political, just anyone just, working through things. And so when I came to this country, I've just always been, fascinated of this country. And then when I came to Amazon, and even in other companies, I've always been involved in that DEI, right? Because it's a journey. And so just continue to learn. The one thing that I will say when I think of DEI is I always looked at myself and said, how can I make impact? How can I influence? How can I make change? And a lot of it comes down to educating, right? I think a lot of things that we see that are occurring these days is that we don't seek to understand each other. More importantly, we don't seek to educate each other. And so that's been one of my greatest passions, as with you in AWS and pretty much any of the orgs that I've been in at Amazon. That's always been a focus. And I'm really grateful that I've got leaders that allowed me to go ahead and stretch that muscle, so to speak. So it's a passion that is going to be continuing for decades and centuries. I may not still be here, but someone's going to continue to carry on that torch of seeking to understand and educating.
I love that. I love what you said about it being a journey, and also this identity that you talk about as being an educator. And I think, for our educators out there, we know that even as teachers or as educators, you're always learning and always growing, and you're always on that journey, like you said.
So I learned a lot about myself in this journey, with teaching about biases, unconscious biases and whatnot. Learned a lot about myself as well.
So in addition to that ability to learn about yourself and learn more about this world, what has motivated you all to continue to kind of stay this course? We talked about what's brought you here. We've talked about what's gotten you to this point, but what keeps you going? Lexi,
Yeah.
I'll start with
You know, I look at it this way. There are so many people that have gone before me in different races and such that I identify with. There's so many sacrifices that have been made. And so when I think of Dr. King, we're sitting here, we're the dream realized, right? We're his dream realized. And so I look at it not only as a great passion of mine, but it's my way of showing gratitude to those that have made sacrifices, you know, my grandparents, my parents, or whatnot. So that's what keeps me motivating. That's what keeps me going, is that there were those that fought very, very hard to get me where I am today. And I'm so, so grateful. And that's what keeps me motivated.
I love that inspiration, that impetus to keep giving back, and then to remember what was poured into
Absolutely.
us, right? So yeah, I think that speaks to me a great deal. So Jesse, how about you?
1000% to what you just shared. It drives you. I want to see others in the room, period, besides myself. And so I take that journey on. Again, being first to go to college, I always felt like I'm breaking barriers. And so mentoring, giving back, staying connected. When I'm in the room, having conversations and making sure the voice is heard beyond my own. And what am I doing? There's a responsibility to continue to bring back. So 1000% there. Then I also shared to some fun stuff with that is me, because I'm a finance guy, I like process and controls and all this weird stuff. I love the programming piece, that taking an idea, right, a concept in your mind, going through ideation to implementation and seeing it come to real and seeing where I want to explore certain things, share it with leadership team, and then see it come to life and actually see someone higher in that seat. And so I remember one time I say, with conferences, let's be intentional, right? Let's get hires from the conferences. Let's set a number. Oh, Jesse, you're crazy. I can get that number. I may be crazy. Let's set the number. We doubled the number. And so seeing those things come to fruition motivates, drives me to continue to do more. Greater.
There you go, doing greater. You also touched on some very Amazonian concepts, right? So taking things from ideas to implementation, and a huge part of that at Amazon is data, right?
Yes.
And so when we think about that data, we know earlier this year, Amazon shared some of the data with regard to its workforce. So would love to hear from both of you about some of the ways that your lines of business are focused on increasing representation and retaining that representation based on that data that came out.
Yeah, great question. So I've always kept close to the data, so I wasn't surprised at all with that. In looking at the data and seeing our underestimated individuals on there, it was somewhat concerning. And so what I ended up doing was looking at it and saying, okay, how do we move the needle? How do we move backwards, right? And so I wanted to take an approach with the hiring teams that, not to shame them necessarily, right? But again, to educate them, right? Share that data with them. This is what your organization looks like. Here's how we can help you do that. There's some great things that our company is actually doing to move the needle on that. So when I saw that data, I didn't automatically go, oh, I just pretty much said, we have work to do. Let's roll our sleeves up and let's get it done.
Just like, we've been talking about this being a journey, being a process. And it sounds like what you are tapping into is that again, that educator identity, right? Just making the time to connect with groups and say, hey, this is what's out there. How can we work? How can we continue on the journey to do greater? So with you as the person who coined that phrase here in our conversation, Jesse, talk to me about what your line of business is doing in that same regard. So increasing and retaining that representation.
Key word, retaining. It connects the dot to increasing. And so what I mean by that is looking at us. So I'm in the recruiting side of business, right? Looking at us as humans, the recruiters themselves, right? And saying, how are we showing up at work? So I saw the data, that's folks are actually present today. What are we doing to retain our talent today, internally? Because when they're sharing a story, what connected me to the recruiter I'm still friends with to this day was that she was authentically her. And her sharing, she even told me what I needed to sign up for. She knew, hey, Jesse's not any Black people there. In Seattle, including within Amazon. Got it. And so I understood what I was coming to. And that authentic self showed up. And so what we started to do is, what are we doing to support our team? What internal programming, making sure voices are heard. So we had a series of conversations with leadership team, connecting the dots, which led to tangible results. We actually built programming. We had Diversity Learning Week, focused on speakers, content, material, frameworks that people can actually leverage and use in a conversation with people and feel more comfortable when questions comes up. So looking at us as humans was a huge part. So when you're connecting with the candidate, that you actually are connecting with the candidate authentically about the experience. When they come on board, they know what to expect, and that way they can stay longer. So that's the other side. So everything she just shared, 1,000%, we have intentional goals, we have intentional focus. We try alternative pipeline opportunities to see what we can do in the recruiting space, have fun with it, new programming, but not forget the people that actually are working here.
Absolutely. If I may add to that as well, too, in my space, I've actually taken the time, and my team has, to have conversations with the diverse talent that we've hired. And one of the reasons I did that as well, too, is that as I identify as a Black woman and has navigated through that company for 11 years, I wanted to make sure that I set realistic expectations with those individuals that we're hiring. As you said, Seattle is not the most diverse place, to have people come there. And it's amazing that candidates, little things like, hey, what are hairdressers like there, right? Where can I go? Is there a circle that I can get together with individuals I identify with? Some of my colleagues may or may not know, but I think I would know. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to have a really candid conversation, with them, in hopes that that speaks to retention as well. And so taking the time to introduce them to the various affinity groups and to introduce to other hires that were hired around the same time really made it somewhat of a support group for them. And so that's one thing that I really pride my team on, that we've been doing that, connecting the dots to it. Really makes a difference.
Yeah, I'll add too, forgive us, I'm gonna have some fun, is like, so relocating, I'm from Philadelphia, right? Born and raised. And I had to get that in there. Everyone knows me. I always say, Will Smith, back in my days. But I moved other places before. I lived in different cities. And I had to admit, I moved 4 times. Moving here, the network, the connections to the affinity groups, Black Employee Network, all of them, right? Women's in Finance. I just had instant friends, connections, barbershops. And I had a community built way faster than any other place I've been to the point that community is what keeps me still here. And when folks, I want them to stay, or when I see them leave, it's like my family leaving. And so you hit a good chord for me just now, realizing how important that connection is with the community and the affinity groups that play a significant role to the environment too as well.
I can even speak to that from a personal perspective. I was a candidate, and I had the opportunity to talk with Amazonians, to talk with Black women in these spaces, to understand exactly what you're saying. What is what's the dynamic like? What is the experience like? And I think that's the interesting thing to me about DEI that I would love to get people to understand, is that we do have these directives as far as data and all those things, but they are connected to that human connection, right? And so I can say for myself that having that human connection is what drew me further into wanting to come here. And so human connection translates to, person that you can point to as a data point, right? So I think it's incredible that you all are doing that really hard work in that space. And I think you're doing that work internally, right? Within the company, educating people, showing them, here are our opportunities, here's the journey that we're going to be on, right? Here's how we can do greater. And then as you look out, because you all have had like recruiting and hiring manager roles and experiences, what are you looking for when you're looking for that next candidate who's going to raise the bar, or that next human connection to bring in to build this tapestry at Amazon?
So what I look for in a candidate, we have an extremely ambiguous environment. And our pace is unlike any other company that I've worked at. And so what I look for is an individual that's very tenacious, that has grit, that's not afraid, to take risks. So when I'm interviewing a candidate, those are some of the things that I look at. While we have a certain format that we follow for interviews and such, I like it to be a very candid conversation with those individuals. And that's what I would tell candidates too when they interview with us. It's really important for us to see that side of you. Don't just focus on, the leadership principles. I have to have examples for each of those, right? But really focus on what it is that you can bring. Let's hear what impact you had at the other company that you could bring here. Let's hear some of the things that you were fearful to try at the other company that you really want to try, because this is a space at Amazon that you can go anywhere, you can try anything that you can. I once had a manager that was phenomenal, that allowed me to do crazy things that I wanted to do, and he would say, Lexi, let's do something crazy, so crazy that we get to the edge that we're going to get terminated. And I was like, no, wait a minute now. We're not going to get that crazy. But I just love working with someone that, believes in my vision and that allows me to go as far as I need to in my vision. So that's pretty much what I look for in someone that's, hey, I want to come to Amazon. This is what I want to do. That's pretty much what I look for in a candidate.
I love that. I would say too, key is being your authentic self. The energy is felt, by the way, in the room right away. You're interviewing someone. It's right away. It's known. And so how can you be your authentic self regarding to sharing the example, to purpose and clarity, to you set the framework up correctly, and also ensure you share the data supports wherever you're sharing. But the key part in that share is authentic self. What I mean by that is, if you had made a mistake on that project, share it. Say what you learned from that mistake. Or if the question was asked of you, say I asked you a question and you don't have a solid answer, say, hey, you know what? I don't have that experience. Be okay with that too. Absolutely. But here's my experience actually I do have. That shows up so much well, because we know in our environment, we're not expected to know everything. But we are expected to say, I'll get back to you, and get back to them, right?
Absolutely.
When you don't know something, and that's okay
it's
too.
Okay.
Because what I'm looking for in an interview is, will you be right for this role? I may actually have a few other roles in mind too.
Yes.
And so what I'm looking for, you already made it this far. I have your resume. Now I have a discussion to understand, based on the examples, based on your experience, where can I best place you?
Absolutely. It's a discussion. So when you're having your interviews, and I'm a bar raiser for our company, and so I always, there's a myth out there that, oh my gosh, the bar raiser interview is the scariest interview for you. And I always try to dispel that myth by just having a conversation, with those individuals. And I want to hear, tell me a little bit about yourself. That's how I always start my interviews, is I want to hear a little bit about yourself. I want to hear about your passion. I want to hear about, where do you hope to go, in this company? Because if this is not the right company for you, then we need to make that decision. I don't want to hire someone that is not going to be successful here in this company, is not going to be what they expected it to be. I want someone that's going to come here, that's really going to get down in the dirt, that's going to be as agile as we are in this company, and help us to innovate further.
I love that commitment to that authenticity in all parts of the process, right? Yes. We talked about it earlier in terms of the environment once you're here, but even, in the process as a candidate, in the interview process, it's to me refreshing to have become part of an organization that values that at every step of the way, because so many times I think we're compelled, we feel like we have to send our representative, right, to the interview. But I've never felt that, and I think that comes through certainly in the experiences that you all are sharing.
Can I give him a secret sauce?
Yeah, give the
secret sauce here. Secret sauce to being authentic. Okay, stay present.
Excellent advice. Yeah.
When you're present in the conversation, you will guarantee say the right thing. Why?
Absolutely.
It's your story. stay super present. I can see in a room looking for the right example, I don't really care the example you use. Just make sure it's your authentic example
Absolutely.
that supports your story that you're trying to convey, to support that question that was asked. But when you're not present, you lost yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Secret sauce.
Secret sauce. And it's okay with that secret sauce. It's okay to ask the interviewers, can I just have a few moments, to breathe and get your thoughts together? Because sometimes it can be intimidating, It's okay to do that.
I appreciate it. I'm here for the secret sauce.
We're not going to give too many secret sauces away, though.
So thinking about what it takes to be an Amazonian. So we talked just a moment about what each of you feels like you're looking for. But when you think about what it takes to be an Amazonian, how would you describe that? And I know, Lexi, you touched on leadership principles just now. So maybe from each of you, and Jesse, I'll start this one off with you. In your opinion, what does it take to be an Amazonian?
Be a pioneer. Just lean in. Just lean in. Have fun. What excites me is that literally I could come in with an idea, like I mentioned earlier, to discussion. I don't care what level you are. And I'm using leadership principles, but have backbone that if someone says something, you have a perspective, that voice in your head is telling you, say it out loud. You can actually say it. It's probably one of the only environments in my career that I felt that comfortable just saying to a vice president, I hear you, but what about this? And here's the data to support. Or maybe I don't have the data yet. Hey, what about this? Let me get the data to support. It's amazing. And so what we look for in Amazonian is that you are sharing your perspective all the time. We actually have whiteboards throughout the entire building so you can jot down your thoughts as they come. That's there. It's in the elevators. It's in the hallway. It's everywhere. So you can capture those in the moment thoughts. That's where the creation comes.
Yeah.
So be innovative,
Absolutely.
be pioneer. Yep.
Yeah. I would say for me, to be an Amazonian, I think I've messaged already grit before. You have to be courageous. There's going to be, we really don't have hierarchy. There's going to be moments that really test your patience, that test your courage, and I think for me, my leadership principles that I love is definitely have backbone. I've had contentious conversations with many of the clients that I support. But then at the end of the day, we'll go out, hey, let's go get lunch. It's about respect. It's understanding what my lane is, and I'm a subject matter expert. And it's about that individual understanding that I'm here to help you hire the people, to be innovative. One of the things too that I had an opportunity to visit the fulfillment centers, and I will tell you, those are some of the hardest working individuals that we have at Amazon. I think we're all hard workers. That's something that we all do. But the pride that they carry, if you ever get a chance to visit a fulfillment center, they are the pride to me of our company, the heart of our company. And I haven't had an opportunity to go visit as much as I have in the past, but I will tell you they exhibit an Amazonian. Their bias for action is exhibited there. They're learning and be curious because they have an opportunity to move to various departments and such. And that's one of the greatest things about an Amazonian. You can learn, you can be curious. I've been in 3 different orgs and learned so many things. So it's fantastic that I have an opportunity to move. If one thing that I tell people when they first start is that if you are not open to change and if you are not flexible, then you're not going to be successful at this company. And so you have to be able, when I say agile, it's not only the speed, you have to be able to be flexible and to move around. And I think that's the biggest thing about being an Amazonian is wicked speed, wicked grit, and just being able, wanting to learn.
Mm-hmm. I'll also add too, because it's known, right? We love to write docs, right? But what's not always known is you have to also be open to the feedback on the docs.
Excellent.
And you take it in and understand that these folks are actually supporting your movement, your effort. And it's not an attack and say, oh, you're adding this here. No, they actually are giving commitment into what you're out to create and adding to and unveiling those areas of where I don't know, to fill in those spaces to say, have you thought about this? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? It's amazing.
I love that process.
Think
Yeah.
about it. I'm a big used to be a big PowerPoint guy,
Yeah.
right? And you can hide behind a PowerPoint, right? Because you're conveying a story as you want to share, and it's on the listening of others to try and pick up. In a doc,
You can't hide in the doc.
You can't. Yeah, you can't.
exposed,
You can't.
Right? You can't.
You can't. And I love that. I love the process that we have with our docs, because there's things that, depending on how many pages that doc is and how much time you spent on it, there's things that, oh, I didn't think about that.
Correct.
You know, oh, I didn't
Correct.
think about the impact of it. And that's what I love about it, is that the diversity of thought. Everyone that's in there, they're thinking about things differently. Everyone obviously is thinking about the customer, how it's going to impact the customer. But there's times, you know, if I have a doc that's being reviewed, or even a promotion document or whatnot, you know, and someone asks that, it's like, oh, I definitely did not think of that. And I appreciate it, right? Because we do it respectfully, you know, and I appreciate that.
Lexi, I feel like you just pulled the thought right out of my head, because what you touched on, the diversity of thought, is what really struck me about this conversation right now, is that when we think about things that are related to diversity, it's not just who's at the table and how do they look. It's the ideas that we can bring to the table, which we get from our experiences, which we get from our diverse backgrounds. And so it's not just being able to bring them to the table, but to the point that both of you are making, having the ability to have them nurtured, challenged, developed, right? And I think that's how we really create this robust environment of diverse thought, diverse experience that ultimately is, you know, helping us to build at the speed of Amazon. So I think that that's just so central to what we do, especially when we think about DEI space. So when we think about DEI opportunities at Amazon, when we think about how we could improve the way that DEI is done at Amazon, some of that may involve, and Lexi, you touched on this earlier, kind of dispelling myths that may kind of pervade out there. So if each of you could dispel one myth about Amazon, what would it be?
Yeah, so I think a good myth that we can dispel is our company, you know, everyone is overworked and works hard and whatnot. I think people need to remember we started in a garage and we fly planes now, right? And so we didn't do that by sitting on our laurels and not really doing, you know, working hard. At that time, our company was so focused on innovation, right, and diversity of thought. It's not to say that it was forgotten, right? As we grow into a company right now, we need to mirror what our customer base looks like. They're very diverse. And so there's a lot of great things that our company is doing right now. The teams that we lead, for instance, the programs, you know, that we lead speak very much, you know, to it. And I think as individuals that we identify as diverse individuals, and so the company is listening to us, right? As far as the work-life balance place and such, that's definitely up to you, right? I love my vacations. I love time with my friends and my family, and so that's up to me to make sure that I organize my time accordingly. I am a leader that my expectation is that for individuals on my team to make sure that they take care of, you know, self-care, right? That's extremely important. So I think that that's one of the biggest myths that we hear about Amazon.
That's a great one, because the work-life balance was something that did scare me. Right, before I came here, and I grew up in a consulting life. I worked at different consulting firms, and so that life of high octane output, I'm like, oh no, is Amazon gonna be that way? And I realized a lot of that's within yourself. And so I always tell folks, so when I came here, not only I'm a Black man, I'm also a father. I have 2 children, and I'm a single, right, father. Divorce. So I bring that perspective to the table as well. And so having that balance of home and work is important to me, right? And what I realized in the same culture we have, like have backbone and be speaking it up in a doc review, it also applies in your personal life.
Absolutely.
I see it transcends folks. My team has no problem letting me know, hey, I need to take a time off. Or I'll let them know, you need to take some time off, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really good example of where I see and I experienced too, because I would say my 5 years being here, always felt this healthy balance of working. And I'm a type A personality, so I like to work hard, but that's how I occur. And I also say that just in generally speaking from a DEI perspective, as I honor and respect everyone's independent point of view of how their experience occurs to them, hands down. So how my life at Amazon occurs to me comes from the experience I've had with mentors, with friends that I consider family. I'm blessed to have that. I don't have that every company I worked at. And that's my journey. I've been here. And every career decision, every time our team change, pivots and movements within, alters my reality of my experience and how it occurs. And so I respect that. And so I'm on this constant thirst, and those conversations I've been having with my team is to understand what more can we do. I never want to see that my occurrence of reality of Amazon is the only occurrence. I know it can't be the case. It's just my own reality, period. And so my chase to every day I come in the office is say, what can we do better? How do we disrupt things we need to disrupt, not fix, disrupt? And how do we do things better that we are doing great at already? And never be happy with the results you have. And back to being present, my little keyword earlier, every day you're planting a new seed.
Yeah.
And when it sprouts, it will show up tomorrow, right? So always realize what you plant today drives the results you see tomorrow. Well, drive results you see tomorrow that impact yesterday.
Correct.
May confuse you that one. But so that's the part that I realize we have to constantly plant the seeds. And things will come up, new nests will come up from previous seeds that were planted. And understand how we got to plant today and stay engaged to alter tomorrow's outcome.
Yeah, and well said. And I think if I can add to that too, earns trust is a leadership principle that comes to mind when I think about dispelling some of the myths of working very hard. You have to trust your team, right? I'm able to take my vacations and I'm able to unplug and I'm able to trust my team, right? If you're going to hire individuals, you need to be able to trust them, right? And so I have leaders that I report to as well too. And so they should know what my scope of work is and I should be able to trust, right? I joke and I tell my team sometimes, I say, you know, guys, we're not necessarily in a role that we can make the stock drop. You know, I joke and then I say, but there are individuals that are. You know, and at the end of the day, you know, even though I joke and I say that, we all do contribute, you know, to the stock, right? But it's that earning trust, you know, with each other that that really helps us to unplug.
I think those are great, great perspectives on the myths and how we can face them and how we can. One way that we can dispel them, to your points, is to, you know, make sure that we're prioritizing ourselves, right? And making sure that we're on teams that are supportive of that. So I think that those are great responses. So thank you so much for sharing them. As we kind of wind down, come to a close today, we've been talking about this idea of pulling up for change, right? Like, you know, what are we doing to be present, to your point, Jesse, about changing the landscape and moving the needle, as you said, Lexi. So we've touched on some of those really great initiatives that you all have going on. Jesse, you mentioned the DEI Learning Week. Lexi, you mentioned having the ability to go back to your teams when certain data comes out to share opportunities to learn. So we have pulled out some of those great things, but to close us out, if you could each give us just one more way that you feel like Amazon as an organization is pulling up for change.
Yeah, I think last year we had a lot of lessons learned last year with everything that was going on. And I'm really grateful that the company stepped up and recognized that, hey, there's things that we need to do. There's some change we need to make here. And so the team that I'm leading, you know, was formed in Q3 of last year. And so that was really important. I think holding the leaders accountable is extremely important. Getting commitments from our company. I think the biggest thing is that, like I said, it's a journey. There's no secret sauce, unfortunately, you know, for diversity. It's about our company being open and willing to learn, you know, and educating each other. And I have to tell you, in my tenure at the company, I have not seen as much trainings as we have, you know, for everyone to learn in the DEI space, opportunities for a lot of people in the DEI space. And so to me, it speaks to our being very serious about it and our moving forward in that journey.
I would say, yeah, roll up the sleeves, get dirty, right? And again, open up things, test things, challenge things, results, making sure our incentive programs are aligned to our objective and goals. Revisit that often, every day, if you have to. Every day, not if you have to. Every day, revisit that, because that is where we love data, and we love results, and how we ensure we align incentives to the results and keep that cycle going. So what I mean by that is, if we're pushing diversity and looking to hire the more diverse talent, what are we doing to incentivize our recruiting teams to support hiring diverse talent? Look at that. Inspect that. Again, I told you I'm a finance guy. I'm an auditor, right? Inspect those things. Look at yourself and what you're doing, your area, your processes that you're involved in. What are you doing in your space to challenge and share with leadership team opportunities? What occurs from a leader may look different than what occurs for you. I said that earlier. Share those things. What tools and mechanisms do we have in place to they can escalate things as needed. And so for me, I just encourage that continuum appetite to enhance, strengthen, and build a better tomorrow.
I love it. You two are certainly leaders who are hungry for that change. And I'm grateful to have been able to share this time with you and with you joining us today for the summit. So on behalf of our great panelists and myself, thank you so much for joining us.